what are the principles or the ethics around how that company look to deliver AI? Like what are they trying to achieve with it? So we're very clear at Workday that our first principle around AI is amplifying human potential, right? Like everything that we do should help you do your job better, more efficiently.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.
Hey folks, greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. I'm your host Paul Spain, and today real privilege to have from Workday Jonathan Brabant. How are you, Jonathan?
Doing well. Great to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for joining the show. Your first time here, so better get you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about where you fit into this big wide world of tech in New Zealand.
Yeah, sure. So Jonathan Brabant, I'm the Regional Director for Workday New Zealand. I'm a Kiwi, born South Island, found my way to Australia in my mid-20s, lived in Bondi, lived the dream, met my wife, a couple of kids, and moved back to New Zealand to lead Workday about 4 years ago. And yeah, so great to be here and, share the next few minutes with you.
Yeah. Oh, great to have you on the show. Of course, a big thank you to our show partners, including Workday, also 1NZ, 2 Degrees, Spark, HP, and Gorilla Technology. So we'll jump into a little bit of sort of international and local news. I guess crossing over both sides, the award winners for James Dyson's sort of global innovation awards that they do each year just has come out in the last few days, and I thought it was interesting to monitor those. I find Dyson to be a pretty interesting company, and James Dyson's story pretty inspiring. And I like that they do these awards each year to kind of, I guess, encourage and shine a bit of a spotlight on some of those innovating around the world. So from New Zealand, we have a New Zealand national winner, and that was for something called Lensare, which is from Mark Campbell of University of Canterbury. And his innovation, his invention is 3D printed glasses that address what I would say is probably a reasonably sort of niche scenario, but it's those who get impacted by sort of flashing lights and the like, and maybe have epilepsy or photophobia, which can impact them with the flashing lights. And so what these glasses do is when they recognise that there's an issue, flashing lights for instance, they basically just tint the glasses out to black, so the impact of the situation has a much reduced impact.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, I thought what a cool idea, and there's a video up if you, and we'll probably put it in the show notes for Lensare, and it's a bit of a run through on the situation, on the stats. I think it's something like 1 in 4,000 people are impacted, but if you're one of those people, then having a solution, potential solution, could be quite useful. Yeah. So good to see. A couple of other awards. One was the medical award presented to an Italian product designer, something called OnQ, a smart keyboard designed for people living with Parkinson's disease, which actually impacts a lot of people. I think a lot of us and a lot of those listening would know somebody that's been impacted, and it's a pretty challenging thing for those with the tremors and freezing and so on. So a keyboard that's designed to, help those folks to be able to communicate, really helpful.
My great-grandfather.
Yeah, okay.
Yep, he's one of them.
Yeah. So I think it's just great, these new innovations that are coming through. The other one that stood out was the Sustainability Award. That was a product called WaterSense out of Poland, which is an autonomous water quality monitoring device that's designed to, I think, keep a track of the water quality in rivers. And this is something that often, is still done reasonably, manually with, we'll go and test the water, and it kind of happens, on this sort of, cycle of when someone can come in and do it. So being able to do that on a real-time basis rather than on the occasional sampling basis. So that's something, that certainly could have a relevance to New Zealand too, if it ends up, being something that, that lands commercially. So
Yep.
yeah. So those ones were interesting. The other thing on a local front, Microsoft have been a bit in the media around their AI price hike for their consumer Microsoft 365 plans.
Yeah, I read about that.
And this is an interesting one. I don't think we've talked about it on the show before, but I was one of those that was impacted. I had a family Microsoft 365 account, and earlier on in the year, I realised, hold on, the prices sort of jumped, but effectively through, I don't know, sleight of hand type mechanism. So the plan that I was still on existed, or the plan that I was on at the price point I was paying existed, but that was called something else. And I was effectively migrated to a more expensive plan, maybe 40% more, with a co-pilot kind of add-on built into it. So it was just kind of nudged along. And I was aware of it. And so I went in, it was just a monthly subscription. So I just adjusted it, back onto the right plan. But yeah, fair bit of media attention, especially after, the government were basically going after Microsoft in Australia. And, I think that was probably what put the pressure on Microsoft to have a sort of closer look at themselves there, with the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission coming in on them. And yeah, they basically jumped in and offered to refund people for, whatever their overage was in terms of their spending.
Yep.
So, yeah, good on Microsoft for stepping up to the plate. From what I can tell, I actually haven't had any emails from them yet. So hopefully they're also going to, honour the refund for those who moved, a little bit sooner than this most recent publicity.
It's worth, I think everyone should be checking what the price structures look like for all SaaS products, because all the main SaaS providers are embedding AI now into their platforms, and they've all got different pricing models, Workday included. And so, it pays to actually have a look at the terms and conditions. They can't just do it to a consumer without, essentially putting it forward to them. So I think it's just something that everyone has to be aware of. Like, we're all aware that AI needs to be monetized, and all the SaaS providers are going to start passing that through. So I think it's just everyone needs to be hyper aware of it now.
Yeah, and look, we've seen, varying increases through, a range of, products and services over the last few years. I think, the last couple of weeks we've, there's been a bit of discussion around, the likes of, YouTube putting up their prices for the premium subscription, and really most of the streaming platforms, whether it's music or film and TV, those prices just keep getting moved up, right? And so it is interesting Microsoft took this particular approach, because they could have just bumped all their prices, right? It'd be interesting to do a sort of full comparison over different vendors. We've got another vendor at the moment that has, they did some interesting maneuvers to, we're bumping you up to this plan, this next plan, but we're going to keep the price the same, so you're all good. And then it was an unneeded plan for a particular SaaS product. And then, I don't know, maybe 24 months later, they're like, you're getting a 67% discount. We can't give you that anymore. We'll need to bump you up. And it's like, well, actually the old plan was just fine, thank you. We've retired that now, or it's too complicated to get you back onto the plan you're on.
Yeah,
so,
there's so many options now for whether it's businesses or whether it's consumers, and there's lots of different AI tools as well. Well, I think, like, we're all familiar with ChatGPT, but the more you dive into different tools, there are other options that people can use. So I just think, if you're looking at your existing agreements, it doesn't matter whether you're a business or a consumer, it just pays to pay attention over the next couple of years and make sure that you are actually, getting what you need. Like, Workday is always going to offer our core platforms as well, like we always have, but then, how do we actually monetize AI on top of that for the consumers that want it, that want that heightened level of efficiency? And so it's just having options. Yeah.
And look, there is extra investment and a cost associated with AI. And of course, you're gonna spend the money if it's going to give you a return on investment, right?
Yeah.
But you have to be aware and thinking through these things, and acting accordingly.
Yeah, I thought Microsoft handled it pretty well.
Yeah.
Actually, they're a partner, and I thought they took it pretty well.
Yeah. I think they probably could have done it earlier on in the year until sort of waiting until the ACCC came after them. But then they've moved pretty quickly, and the fact that New Zealand was included in that straight away was good. What I haven't delved into, and I did see it did get some attention globally, is what's happening in the rest of the world, because Australia and New Zealand are sort of one region for Microsoft now. So you can see why those two might just naturally go hand in hand. And here our Commerce Commission is a little bit, well, they're different from the Australians, and they do different things. Apparently they'd written to Microsoft and said, hey, this probably doesn't look too good, but I don't think there had been any particular action until the ACCC attention. But we're getting what looks like a reasonable and fair result at this point. Yeah. And I'll report back on the other one I'm dealing with if I don't get a good result. Maybe we'll see. But it is it's one of the challenges dealing with with any sort of subscription. Often the costs will increase over time, right?
Yeah.
And it's pretty hard to get a vendor who will lock down and say they're not going to increase prices for you forever, right?
Yeah, and they're all going to make mistakes too.
Yeah.
I think that the true test is not whether it's business or personal. All SaaS providers make mistakes, right? Like if anyone uses Sonos, they got absolutely dragged through the mud 18 months ago on an app update. I'm a big Sonos user, but it's all about how these tech companies respond. That's generally, that's what we talk a lot about is things are going to happen. How do you respond? And that's how you judge them. Yeah.
How did it land with Sonos for you? Because they had quite a bit of attention there for a little while when things were quite broken and so on, right?
Oh, I'm just a consumer. So just speaking as a consumer, I'm still a fan. I still like it. I don't think it's probably, there are probably audiophiles listening, watching that, would argue that there's other ways of getting lossless music to better quality. But I think for the price point, as relatively uneducated, listener at home, it's fine, it's good, and I'm still on board.
Yeah, yep. Well, it's also a lot of these changes. It's a big deal to try and change to another ecosystem too, right?
Yeah.
So if there's some issues for a couple of months and then it comes back right, that's by far the easiest track in a lot of cases to follow, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. Good. On the international front, an article that Reuters put out that really caught my attention in regards to Meta, and they put it out as a special report. The headline: Meta is earning a fortune on a deluge of fraudulent ads, documents show. And so this was based on internal information from Meta, I guess, in relation to Facebook and especially, but right across Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, and basically saying that 10% of their annual revenue, or $16 billion US, coming from running advertising for scams and banned goods.
It's incredible.
It's
quite a hefty sum.
Quite a shocker, really. So for those that are that are curious to sort of understand a little bit more, because I think these tools that so many of us use, if we just kind of go on and blindly use them without understanding, are we helping a company do good or do bad? If we don't think about that stuff, then you're potentially encouraging and supporting some pretty bad activities. And I think we look at probably every country in the world, but New Zealand certainly gets hit with our fair share of people getting scammed out of their life savings and varying other sorts of things. And to hear that Meta, even if it's just for a window of time, because the documents sort of highlighted this was something that Meta were working to reduce, but even if just for a window of time, they're making that scale of money out of inappropriate kind of adverts. Yeah, didn't make me feel particularly pleased, put it that way.
Yeah, there's the ethics on the Facebook side, which I don't want to wade into, because there's two sides to that.
It's pretty complicated.
It's pretty complicated on that ethics side of it, but on the role of regulation, that's what I find quite interesting here. I think especially we talked about Australia and New Zealand and how we operate differently in this part of the world a lot of the time. And if anyone's paying attention in Australia at the moment, there's a big debate around social media access in Australia for kids. And, we operate in a very regulated banking environment. The government are prepared to step in and, put some pretty hefty regulations in that sector. But in this particular sector, it's still, we were talking pre-show, it is still very Wild West around what they can do and what they can get away with. So the fact that Facebook have come out and said, the revenue, is essentially so fundamental to their aspirations around funding their AI push. They need the capital, and all priorities are about capital for AI. I don't think they can't obviously regulate themselves on that. So what they do. So anyway, it's ethically tricky, but I think you're right to raise the questions on it.
My concern is that we've kind of seen years of problems from Meta, and it never seems to appear that they're really taking them all as seriously as what they should be. But I recognise these things aren't easy, and one of the things that was highlighted in the documents is that they ban advertisers if their automated systems get to a certainty level of 95% in regards to an advertiser is committing fraud. And this is kind of where the complexities in the two sides come in, because, well, if they're doing that at 95%, some of those whose advertising gets blocked and so on, maybe it is actually legitimate content. But then for 95%, that means pretty large chunk of that might be illegitimate, right? And when they're talking about this sort of 10% of annual revenue, what I didn't see was where that's an absolute certainty. So is that an advert that sort of has a 1% chance that it is a scam or promoting banned goods? At what point does it cross that threshold? So possibly, that figure is being overstated if you were to break it down to sort of reality, if you were to get a human to sort of run through. But this is part of the challenge. We're relying in society more and more on automation and AI to figure things out, rather than a human that's going to have a look and go, oh, no, that's legitimate. I can see here, I can see your shop, and yep, you've got, that's the right domain name, and this and that. All the dots joined up to, you're a legitimate seller of those goods, versus another one they can look at and go, definitely not, sort of thing. But even in those cases, there are areas where it's not easy to make for a human to make a determination, and so the AI is not necessarily going to get these things right.
Well, it was fascinating because it was a sliding scale.
The
ad revenue went up as it detected that it was more likely
right.
fraudulent.
Yeah, they put the price up.
So the price goes up as they detect it's fraudulent, which is, okay, it's like obviously there's more risk maybe. I don't know how they price that one in. But then, so in some situations in that article, it talks about, there are actual, complaints, cases raised, and in those situations, you wonder why it can't just be shut down.
Yeah, and that's a bit of a perverse incentive, isn't it? If Meta makes more, cranks up the price for inappropriate adverts and scams, right? How does that discourage them? So, apparently their user base is exposed to 22 billion organic scam attempts a day. So, and then that's on top of the 15 billion scam adverts to users daily, which is pretty mind-blowing when you think of that number, 15 billion scam ads presented to users daily.
Huge.
Like, that doesn't just mean each time you go, each day you access, a meta platform that you're likely to see one scam. It's likely to be multiple. And looking at those numbers of organic ones.
Yeah, and you might say,
again,
people might be thinking, I haven't seen them, but then these advertisers probably know if you haven't seen it, you're probably not the profile, the demographic. They're not targeting you. So it could be the more vulnerable age groups, could be demographics that are, who knows, might be English as a second language. You don't know, right? But they're very precise in the way they advertise.
Yeah.
So just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not a big problem.
No, it's a pretty big deal. Now, home robots. This is something you've got yourself on a waiting list for the One X Neo, $20,000 US. So we're talking about 35K New Zealand. You can put in your pre-order for the One X Neo. 5 foot 6 inches. I think it weighs around around 30 kilos, and designed to do some of those household chores. How would you feel about having a robot wandering around your home?
Oh, well, I've been pushing back on the robot vac. My wife's pretty keen on the robot vac, and I don't know why I'm pushing back on it. So I can't see the 5'6" X1 walking around anytime soon. I'm probably not an early adopter household. No, not for me. But I think there'll definitely be a lot of excitement out there. Some of the Elon Musk disciples who can't quite get their hands on an Optimus yet, I'm sure will be keen to test this one out.
Yeah. It was quite interesting. I watched Joanna Stern's coverage of the video and so on online there. And it was actually it sort of felt pretty disappointing there's now a humanoid robot, but, actually it can't really do much at all. And it looked like most of the things that it needs to do is via teleoperation. So, you've got somebody somewhere else, looking into your home and your environment and, trying to carry out that task by remote controlling the robot. So I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. But, I imagine there will be a bunch of people that are going to be, signing up, even if what they're getting is really not particularly autonomous humanoid.
So they confirmed New Zealand shipping?
So initially it's US market.
All right.
So so you'd have to do some dodgies there to probably get one running in New Zealand. But would they necessarily detect exactly where it is if you had one shipped to a US address? I don't know. But we certainly had the early adopters of bringing the first Teslas and the like into the New Zealand market. So it's not out of the question. I'm not aware of any kind of legal challenges to bringing a humanoid robot on the flight. You buy its business class fare and sit it next to you. And
when they ask you if you've got any lithium batteries, you say a pretty big one. Actually, it's going to be sitting next to me.
Yeah, that could be the problem, couldn't it?
Yeah.
That might be the holdup. You got to put it on a ship to get it here.
Who knows?
Because you'd probably be over the limit. So. I'm sure there's a workaround there. You can rip it open.
Someone will write in and tell you how to get a humanoid robot from a US to.
Yeah. All right. Well, put one on. Get one to autonomously pilot a boat, US to New Zealand. Yeah, I've heard of people buying some very nice yachts in certain parts of the US. Where at times there are deals to be had that are not had in the New Zealand market, and then they get them down to the New Zealand market where they might be worth 50 to 100% more than what they're sold for in the US. So there's a job you could get your humanoid robot to do if only it were trustworthy.
There we go. Skipper a boat of parallel wooded products down.
Now, the other story that caught my attention was from the BBC, and this is something I don't think we've delved into in the past, but something I've sort of followed on and off over the years. And sort of background is that within the British postal service, the post office over there, going back a number of years, there was this huge scandal where postmasters were getting into trouble legally for ripping off the post office system. Huge amounts of money apparently disappeared. So you ended up with huge fines, and I can't recall the full details of all of the outcome, but big fines, potentially sort of jail sentences and so on for these dodgy postmasters. But actually, it turned out that they weren't dodgy at all. The software was just rubbish, and so
Amazing.
the software was saying that they had been embezzling all these funds, and the software was actually broken. And so you just ended up with these huge dramas. And they've now got to a point where they've paid out £1.2 billion to some 9,000 victims that were impacted, by this scandal, basically. So what's that, about $2.5 billion
It's big money.
New Zealand dollars, but thousands and thousands of legitimate people running these post offices all over the UK, and
A lot of them probably pretty small operations
Yeah.
in rural areas, just, good, hard-working English folk, and caught up in this.
yeah,
What was amazing to me reading that was that it was sequential, what you'd call finance systems. So it wasn't just, they didn't get it wrong once, they got it wrong again. They obviously migrated whatever the code was into the second system and then continued to do it. So that was quite unbelievable. I thought, well, not once, but twice.
and just the scale that they wouldn't be able to get to the bottom of it when people were saying, no, I didn't, rip anything off,
Yeah.
and that they would go after so many people. Just pretty bizarre, but good to hear they're coming to the end of that one. So So onto Workday and yourself, Jonathan. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background and where you've worked across the industry and so on before joining Workday.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I joined SAP. It was my first role around about, 15, 16 years ago, and spent close to a decade there. And then I hopped over to Workday 2018 and have been with Workday for the last 7 years. So if people aren't familiar with Workday, we do finance and HR software. Essentially, it was well known in the HR space, but more recently, a huge amount of traction with finance. So it's now top-rated finance solution in the world by a number of different analysts, which is awesome. And now we're evolving again into being an AI platform with Workday. So yeah, my role here in New Zealand is leading our go-to-market team and also supporting all our customers. So you've got a great team here, and you've got a huge office, got over 200 people working. I think you had one of my colleagues here 6 months ago that told you all about that. So so it's a great role. I get to work with get to work with some great executives across the New Zealand business and public sector scene. So it's good.
And in terms of in the market, there's usually you get sort of HR software or finance software. Not so common to see all of that capability wrapped together, and now with sort of AI coming in on top. And for the New Zealand market, there's been an announcement that you're going to be handling full payroll for New Zealand as well at some point in the future. Yeah,
we're really excited about the payroll announcement. So we just came out and announced that we'll be building payroll, and we'll start dev on that early in the new year. We just delivered Australian payroll. So Australian payroll has been live, general available for all our customers over in Australia for at least 18 months. So we feel like we've got that pretty stable.
Yeah.
And then with the recent legislation announcements around the Holidays Act in New Zealand, it's lined up really nicely for us to be able to start building our own local payroll, hopefully, tie in with the changes to legislation. The changes and early indications are we are going to align closer to Australia. So what we've been building over there should line up. But even so, we've got two dev teams based here in Auckland, over 20 people who are going to be hard at work at it. So even if we have to do a bit of configuration on the Holidays Act on its current state, I'm sure we'll get there. They're a pretty sharp team. So that's kind of the payroll side, which is really exciting. I can't think of another HR and payroll solution that's on one code line. Mm-hmm. So that'll be a first for New Zealand, which will be really great for all the New Zealand companies out there. And then on the HR and finance side, so it's the most used HR platform in the world. So we've got over 65 million users of Workday. Incredible data set. So in terms of what we're trying to do with AI now to leverage that data set, it's pretty exciting. And then, with the finance side, the capability, we're just building it out at pace. And we've got two really big deployments ongoing at the moment. So Mercury Energy just went live, Workday Financials, and Genesis Energy are currently in deployment as well. So two of the big gentailers are right into it, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, so your customer base, you're sort of well known for, I guess, that sort of big end of town, banks and energy suppliers and the like. But how broad is that sort of customer base in a market like New Zealand? Yeah,
we're definitely trying to dispel the myth that Workday is just for large enterprise, which is really tricky because our first customers in New Zealand were Fletcher Building, Fulton Hogan, Air New Zealand, and they're all nameable customers for us. Great, been in our community for 10 years, but they have huge HR and finance teams, and they all move around the New Zealand community, which isn't big. We see each other at supermarkets in the evening and whatnot, and then Workday gets known as a large enterprise platform, but the reality is huge strides have been made to essentially offer Workday in a way that's much more consumable for medium enterprise, small, medium business. And so we can scale it up. We can scale it down. Over half of our 5,000 customers worldwide are less than 1,000 employees. Mm-hmm. So we are. That's part of my role, is to make sure we bring Workday to all businesses and all public sector organisations in New Zealand. Tell the story properly. We want to see New Zealand businesses be successful on the best tech, so not just the big ones.
Yeah. Now, we've heard previously around the role of AI. I'm kind of keen to hear from your perspective, what you're seeing out there with your customers. It does seem to vary a lot in terms of how different organisations have been able to gain traction or not gain traction in terms of utilising and leveraging AI. I think we were kind of chatting before the podcast around co-pilots, like often you'll go into an organisation and it's sort of the common thing that there's some co-pilot in there.
Yeah, which is great.
And of course Microsoft makes a level of that available, free to all of their subscribers, and they have a very big market share with Microsoft 365 in New Zealand. Of course, Google have their own offerings as well, and others that sort of fit in that kind of core productivity space in terms of being a replacement for the likes of ChatGPT, but on a business kind of enterprise level. But to really kind of jump into AI is often quite challenging for organisations, right?
Yep.
What do you see as the challenges and the ways that folks are kind of getting past some of those challenges, which are often a cautiousness around where their data ends up, and also trustworthiness, right?
Yeah.
It's like Microsoft rolled out their rolled out, it's probably there's a bit of a stretch actually, but they've offered a level of Copilot in Excel. I think it's actually sort of still in beta. I think they announced it probably, 3, 4, 5, or more months ago, but it's not fully there. But it's sort of an example of an AI capability built into software. But when they rolled it out, they were warning, like, if you want really reliable, consistent results, this is not the not the feature to be using, right? And that's part of the challenge for businesses that want consistency.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways to kind of answer and take that question. Like, our research tells us that New Zealanders above average in adoption of AI. But then when we look at the businesses in New Zealand, they're definitely behind. And so that says to me, we used to call it shadow IT, and now we kind of refer to it as, you could refer to it as like agent proliferation, or, you know. So, you know, the point being, you know, I'm driving to work with ChatGPT and I'm asking it all sorts of questions about the organizations I'm going to meet that day, or executives I'm going to meet, or, you know, trying to get background. And so I'm, you know, like all that data is like hitting ChatGPT outside of the Workday safe environment. So people are already playing with these tools. They're just not necessarily getting them through their corporate environment, you know, through their safe environment. So I think there's definitely a gap at the moment between what people are expecting in their work life and what they're actually getting like brought down from the companies. But that is changing. Like we're going to announce on our next earnings call, first New Zealand client that's just signed an AI product essentially. And then you got to wait a little bit of time for them to embed it. Then the case studies come through. Then the rest of the enterprise, you know, in New Zealand get some comfort that one of their peers has gone and done it. Yep. And we're not alone. Like Workday's not the only provider that are just starting to really get that traction around, you know, signing up businesses for, you know, dedicated AI transformation. I guess I think about it like delivered AI. So we actually come up with the use cases on how this is going to work for you in an ethical way and deliver it.
You're working very deeply inside your client organisations to.
We're designing the use cases for AI. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Yeah. We have an agent called Recruiter Agent. Yep. Okay. Now, so Recruiter Agent, essentially through an acquisition that we made of a AI platform that does AI recruiting. Yep. You will tell it what you're looking for in a candidate. Okay, and it will go through and it will rank and score and organize all the candidates for you and give you a recommendation, right, using all the large language models and AI capability, which rapidly increases screening time.
Right.
You're
effectively delivering sort of an off-the-shelf
AI, correct.
Agent. Okay, so you don't have to kind of do that sort of deep engagement. You go, actually, this is something that we found is relevant to a lot of organisations.
Correct.
And you're going to need to feed it with the right data to make it useful.
That's it.
But if you do that, then it can do a lot of that lifting.
And that's what we see that businesses want now. So 2 years ago, it was take a huge amount of data, store it in a cloud environment, train some type of models, and try and harness it. And it didn't get the return on the investment. It didn't actually really provide any business value for huge cost. Yeah. So now these businesses are kind of looking at companies like Workday, like Salesforce, you know, other cloud native companies to say, right, you deliver to us, you know, at the end user level, the AI capabilities that make a difference to their role, and then we'll adopt them. And so that's what we're doing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I can you know, see something like that being super helpful. How do you kind of, I guess, navigate the challenges of a reduced sort of human element in the mix with these sorts of things? And you know, we've seen sort of situations recently, and it might be as simple as somebody getting a parking ticket that they shouldn't have been given. They'll send an email in and saying, "Hey, this isn't right," and giving the information. But if it's arriving at an AI at the other end, then it's quite hard to emulate empathy and humanness, right? Yeah. There's kind of a risk that that's something that a human might have, especially if you've got a particular algorithm says, look, you can let the top 1% off their parking tickets or something like that. Like, how do you make that that work well with an AI system? How do you not end up sort of being sort of so cookie cut that certain people who might be perfectly talented, but it would take maybe a human to kind of recognize, like, oh, we should take a little bit of a punt and put this person into the interview pool, even though they maybe fall outside on some other criteria.
Yeah.
Is that something that you think about?
Yeah, definitely. No, we we think about it, and I think, all our customers are thinking about it. So like that example you just gave around that particular business process of it, that's fundamentally against our philosophy around developing AI. Okay, so anybody who's considering AI in a corporate environment should look first and foremost at what are the principles or the ethics around how that company look to deliver AI. Like what are they trying to achieve with it? So we're very clear at Workday that our first principle around AI is amplifying human potential, right? Like I can't rattle them all off, but I can remember that one pretty well.
Yeah.
The idea being that everything that we do should help you do your job better, more efficiently. It's true for my team. It's true for other people that I work with in Workday. We all have AI in our jobs now. No one's been made redundant, but we can all now do our jobs more efficiently and better. So I think, there are examples I could give, but that's our first principle. How do we elevate? By reducing manual tasks. Generally speaking, the recruiter example that we just had, right? The argument that we would make would be that AI algorithm would actually highlight a candidate that human bias may have skipped over. So if the way the model's been trained correctly, it'll put people up that a hiring manager may not have given their own bias. So there's kind of two ways to look at that. Like, will the AI be biased? Well, actually, the AI will probably be less biased than the human. And the AI isn't making a decision. It's just putting forward based on the criteria what, objectively is the right few to have a look at. So it's just about amplifying human work. And in that example of AI doing recruiting work, our internal recruiters are saving around about 5 hours a week, so less CV reading time. So we're not saying the recruiter's lost his job, and we're not saying you need half the amount of recruiters. We're saying that's 5 hours is a big amount, though, to free up from a person's capacity to go now work with the hiring manager on what are they really looking for. So we're just trying to we're about making incremental gains at the moment to improve work.
Yeah, and I think that's often the case, isn't it? That there's some efficiency, some improvement, and it's often the sort of, I don't know, could be the drudgery, that disappears. I don't know how you would look at that in a hiring context. Is it drudgery reading through CVs? I guess if you read through a lot of CVs, that could really melt your brain after a while. Yeah, and they do all. I know in my head they kind of do blend together after a while, and you need to be able to break them out and kind of look at them through a system that sorts that data and highlights the things that you need. So yeah, pretty helpful. I saw a reference to a saving of 17,000 hours annually. I think this was an internal figure, was it, for Workday? Is that a number that rings a bell for you?
Yeah, that'll be our sales companion tool that we built.
Yeah, okay.
So I'll just tell you a little bit about that. So essentially all our account executives who manage our accounts, they're getting asked any number of questions from our clients every day. And like all companies, we have a repository of information that we go to try and find answers. Workday's a big platform. Customers know it as well as we do. Their questions are always technical or difficult, and so a lot of our time is spent researching. So if you think about it, we built our own LLM, it's called Sales Companion. It had been live for 6 months and it's had 67,000 questions put into it. But it doesn't just essentially leverage LLMs on our internal library or database. It can also go into Salesforce, and it can look at the customer record, and it can look at renewal dates and things of that nature. So by our calculations, it saved, what was it, 17,000 work hours.
Which when I sort of calculate that, I think that might be 10 or 11 people years, right?
And my team hasn't changed, so I still have the same amount of people, still serving the same amount of customers, but now their ability to go do meaningful work is lifted because of the fact that information they need is much more readily available. And I think anyone that's played around with a ChatGPT versus doing a Google search can kind of understand how that can work, because you can get the information, you can automatically format it in a way that's good for our clients and just helps speed us up.
how far along do you think we are in terms of what can be achieved with AI? I'm curious. I had TV3 wanted to do a news story on the weekend around what they were, a lot of people have been calling the AI bubble.
Yeah.
And my comment, back to the reporter was, well, I think we're actually, we're still pretty early on in the journey, right? Like, I can't account for, whether Microsoft should be a whatever they are, $4 trillion US dollar company at the moment, and the varying market caps and share prices. But it seems to me like, to your point earlier, whether it's New Zealand or more broadly, like there's a long way to go in terms of what we can achieve with AI. Right?
Yeah. Talking about bubbles and AI bubbles, and like I work with people who are you're trying to bring them on the journey of AI for our customers. Like not everyone just jumps in and believes. It's not that simple. Like half my role as a leader and manager is to try and create an environment where we're all learning, kind of curious. And the more you play around with it and the more you watch some of my team members embrace it and see what they can achieve with it, you go, this is too good to just not survive or not last. Like it's not going anywhere. I think, is there a bubble? Potentially. Like potentially it's overinflated from a valuation point of view, but it's not overinflated in terms of what it can actually deliver in terms of productivity, in terms of your ability to learn, your ability to level up as a person. I just did my most recent performance reviews at Workday using an AI assistant that would coach me on how to have better conversations, and it was awesome. So I think you got to separate, is AI legitimately great tech? Yes. Is it overinflated? Well, make your own opinions on how you invest your money, but they're different things. I think.
And I think part of the challenge is that AI can be really good in some contexts and rubbish in other contexts, right? And so it's getting to that point of clarity over, well, where are the very best use cases? Where should we be leaning a lot more into AI? Where should we be more cautious about AI, right? It's that balancing act and that reality, that's always been there with technology. It's that we can get some good stuff and we can get some bad stuff, and we want to kind of maximize on the good and avoid those negatives, right?
Yeah, and I believe that people get AI and software as a service a bit confused. So they think that AI is going to in some way erode software as a service, right? But the reality is AI is software as a service, right? We as a software as a service provider, we're a cloud software provider doing finance and HR software. We now deliver AI as software as a service embedded into our product. So the point you're making is some use cases really don't have value. Some have a huge amount of value. That's our responsibility to look at that. How can we amplify the human? How can we make sure they're safe? How can we make sure they do no harm in the society? We do all that work so that our clients just go, yep, we want to take that capability and it's going to have a big impact in our business. That's when we're doing our job well.
Mm. Any risks that you're aware of that might be related to using AI within the sort of the human resources and the finance sort of worlds in which you operate, that you've as a business you've looked at and gone, ooh, yep, we'll be a bit cautious about that. That needs to mature a bit, or the technology's not there. Yeah, there are any areas that you can particularly call out?
I couldn't tell you. That's way above my pay grade. So back in Silicon Valley, we have an AI ethics council, and we also have a structure for how AI use cases are reviewed. And if they don't pass muster in terms of security, privacy, we have those 4 principles. I've named a couple of them already. If they don't pass, then they don't even go into early adopter, and they don't ever make it to GA. So by the time the software is being shipped to our 5,000 customers around the world, I take it in New Zealand, I bring it to market in New Zealand, and I say, look, this is, it's passed all these rigorous checks, processes. Now it's my job to bring it to New Zealand businesses, and it's it shouldn't have any of those types of risks. So I think
it's a little bit different to what's coming down the pike from Meta,
a bit different to that.
down the road there. And I guess this is the huge difference, right, between what we might use at a consumer level and then what is trustworthy for a business to put their stamp on and to mandate. And it's, I think, part of that challenge you were talking about earlier with the business mandated kind of AI versus the consumer and personal things. And there are challenges there until we get to that sort of, I guess, more mature position in terms of the business AI tools where no one's tempted to utilize a consumer tool for their work, because actually the work AI tools are fully built out, tried and tested and trusted and so on, right?
Yeah, and I think we probably need to sit down in a year to assess how the AI has been embedded in a more enterprise environment and look at the case studies on it. It's the enterprise always lags consumer. That's just the way it is. It's always been like that. And so consumer uptick of AI is now I'd say fairly mainstream, and it's starting to embed in the enterprise too. So then we'll look at what are the risks that we see evolving.
Yeah, from a Workday perspective, is AI moving faster on the HR side compared to the finance side? Is that something you've got to you've noticed?
Not particularly. I think we just announced we'd probably have over 20 agents that are available now, and they'd be right across the platform. Within the HR side, everything from frontline agents that look after scheduled staff, like workforce staff doing shift swapping, automation. You call in sick, the AI agent automatically knows how to find someone that's off, available, place them, no human involved. So it's not just HR performance reviews, it's workforce management. And then we've got on the finance side, there's plenty around expense management, auditing, closing books. The use cases are just right across the platform. It seems, they're definitely opportunities everywhere.
That's fascinating. The sort of the someone calling in sick for a shift sort of thing, and you think of sort of scenarios where a manager kind of calls up someone and it's like trying to twist their arm, like, oh, come on, you can help us out today. Like, how do these things work in an AI context? Is it, like the company AI talks to your personal kind of, AI that's going to represent your case, and they have a bit of a chat and come to an agreement. And,
there are podcasts where two AIs talk to each other. Have you ever participated in one of those or seen one of them?
One of our podcasters he's done a chunk of that type of content. I mean, I personally sort of from a study or research on a topic perspective, I'll often generate something up in a podcast form, because it's a great way to get the AI to pull the content together, and then it voices it so you can consume it while you're driving. I find that's pretty good use case.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we've probably got some pretty interesting years ahead as we move to a world with more AI, more agents, and there will no doubt be times where we kind of step a little bit too far in one direction or another. But I think there's every opportunity for us to step in and push back when the technology kind of goes too far, right?
Oh yeah, when we're going full circle to the Microsoft story at the beginning, right? It's you have to be aware. You've got to be curious. You've got to be looking. You've got to be staying on top of what your providers are doing, personal, business, and taking an interest. And it's really fascinating technology when you demystify it and just start to be a curious learner. So that way you don't get yourself into trouble if you're on top of it.
Yeah. I think it's really, really important to be keeping up to date and trying these things out so you can speak from a level of experience, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good stuff. Was there anything else you wanted to add before?
No, it's good to be here. No, it's great. It's been awesome. Thanks for having me.
Great. No, real privilege to have you on the show, Jonathan. and we'll certainly look forward to the next one. So yeah, big thank you to yourself, to Workday as a partner, Gorilla Technology, HP, Spark, 2 Degrees, and 1NZ. Really appreciate that support that keeps New Zealand Tech Podcast coming. So yeah, that's us for this week, and thanks very much. We'll catch you again on the next episode. See ya.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.